All right, we're recording and I'm totally turning over control.
Hi, everybody. I'm Laura. I'm a Dialogue Doctor editor, and we're really excited that on today's podcast, our guest is Jeff Elkins, the Dialogue Doctor himself. Jeff, we're so excited that you're here. But before we start the interview and let our listeners get to know you a little bit,
This is so uncomfortable.
administrative. He didn't know I was going to do that. Okay, so thanks for listening to the podcast. We love having you as listeners. If you want more of the Dialogue Doctor, head over to dialoguedoctor.com and sign up for the free newsletter. Comes out on Monday. In addition to signing up for the newsletter, you get a free book about how
Tuesday. Newsletter comes out on Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday.
Yeah. Oh. Podcast comes out on Monday. Newsletter comes out on Tuesday.
Oh, sorry about that. See, podcast comes out on Monday. Newsletter comes out on Tuesday. You also get a free book when you sign up for the newsletter. Then scroll down and sign up for Patreon. It's like $3 a month. If you buy $3
a month. I was just agreeing with you. I was like $3 a month. I'm sorry. I'll stop interrupting you. You're doing fantastic.
Thanks. Except that I got the dates wrong. So
nah, it's great.
Okay. So like $3 a month, you get a bonus podcast. Who doesn't want to listen to Jeff more? That's awesome. Okay, so you also, with the Patreon, get access to the Slack channel. Slack channel is awesome because once a month we do a group Zoom where we talk about a short story. And every Tuesday, Jeff puts out a writing prompt. So much fun. You get to read everybody's writing. And then on Thursday, we do an editing prompt so we can go back and we can look at that and think about dialogue in a really fun way. We picked our book club for the month.
Freaky Deaky. That's how I imagine the title being said in my head. Freaky
Deaky. Elmore Leonard.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the book, so I don't know if that title actually represents any, like if that the way they say the title that way represents anything about the book at all. But it's how those words occur in my head.
Freaky picture of a bomb on the cover.
Yeah, so we're gonna blow some stuff up.
There's probably not like a high mouse squeaky voice.
And freaking we're gonna blow some stuff up. Watch this book be about like something really serious. It's about like spousal abuse and drug addiction, and I'm like freaking yeah. Anyway.
Okay, so book club.
I haven't started reading it yet.
Do we have an idea as to when, like what month?
You do yes, we're gonna do the recording for the book club in July, probably the third week of July.
So the first week of August.
That's right. So the second week of September, at the pace that Jeff actually schedules Zoom calls.
Well, at the pace that Laura reads books for book club.
Books. Yeah, I know. I'm the slowest reader ever. The problem is I'm always reading like 3 or 4 books at a time. Yeah. So I need to just focus and finish a damn book. Anyway.
So, okay, last administrative thing. Head over to Dialogue Doctor, hit the workshops tab. We are pulling together a wait list for the character voice workshop. 4 hours of Zoom learning, a 1 hour 2-on-1 session with Jeff and me so we can finish out your character wheel. We're kind of surprised. Can I say this? We were kind of surprised that people wanted to come back and see it again, but
I'm shocked. I am shocked. I was like, surely we're going to finish this and people are going to be like, hey, can I have my money back? But no, that's not what happened. People are like, I'm going to do it again. It's like, oh.
And people are saying, I've told everybody about this. We've got a wait list of, I don't know, more people than we thought were going to sign up ever. So if you're interested and you want to get in on that, go sign up for it. You're not committing yourself to anything. You're just telling us that you're interested. When we get enough interest, we will schedule the date and we'll reach out to you. And if that time and date works great for you, then you can join us.
Fun fact, Baltimore City, where we both live near, used to have city slogans that every mayor would come up with new city slogans. And Mayor Mark Morial had a lot of city slogans. He was like changing them every year. And the worst one he ever did was get in on it. Baltimore, get in on it. So that's what I think. Anytime anybody says get in on that, it was terrible. Anyway, sorry. I digress us.
So basically you just said what I just said is terrible. You
No,
really
no,
don't like,
you're doing a
you really
fantastic
don't,
job.
you really don't like ceding control of this podcast.
You're
to
doing
me.
well. That's because I'm already anxious about what you're going to ask me. So,
I offered to give you the list ahead of time and you
oh
said
yeah,
no.
so I could just stress out about it for weeks. Yeah, no, I think
Okay,
I'm
it's
just
been 3
digressing
days.
because if you're writing a character who has deep-seated anxiety and is naturally doesn't want to be the spotlight of things, having them digress is a wonderful character note because digressing takes the focus off of them and stalls for time because we have a hard out in recording today. So the more I do this, the less questions Laura gets to ask me.
Except that my first question was going to be describe your own voice. So
Oh,
now I don't even have to ask that
son of a
question.
gun. Okay, let's just get
No.
into. You did a fantastic job introducing the podcast. Thank you very much. First question: describe my own voice.
Okay, but no, stop. You can't just answer the question. You need an introduction like you do for other people. So this is Jeff Elkins. Jeff is, during the day, the chief script engineering at Submersion, which means that he works with the writing team to make sure that all of our simulations meet the expectations of the subject matter experts, which is amazing. He is also a spouse and a father of 5. And in his spare time, he is the dialogue doctor. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Laura. It's so great to be here. I'm really excited that you invited me on today. I love your podcast. I think it's fantastic, especially the Q&A episodes, because that's when you're on, and those are the best episodes.
Oh my goodness. Is there anything else about you that our listeners should know? Did I miss anything in the intro?
I write books. I've published 10 books.
I forgot about the book.
2 series and some standalones, although I can't seem to finish a series, which is a terrible, terrible thing.
Oh.
Yeah, so 2 series and some standalones. And yeah, they're fun. They were marvelously edited, developmental edited by a fantastic editor named Laura.
All right, you have to
So
stop that.
yeah, and one of them is actually free. So if I was actually doing an interview, I'd be like, one of them is actually free on Kindle right now. You can go to Kindle and get Grab, the first in the Moneta Watkins and Stacey Howell detective mystery series for free on Kindle. So go grab
Oh,
it.
that was a fun one. Go
Yeah.
read that.
It's short
Yeah.
too. It's more a novella. It's only like 40,000 words. So you can breeze through it in a night. It's supposed to be a
Yeah.
series introduction. So yeah, go enjoy
Pretty
that.
great. Okay, so first thing that our listeners want to know is during the mini conference, you said that the dialogue Daisy came from the line from Tombstone, I'm your Daisy.
You're a daisy if you do.
Oh, your Daisy.
I'm
if
your
you do,
daisy.
yeah.
Oh, it's all of them. I'm your daisy. You're a daisy
Yeah.
if you do. Well, ain't that a daisy? Yeah. So
All right,
I was trying to
talk about
figure out a way to explain character voice. And for those who don't know, which is probably no one, because who researches expressions from the late 1800s, early 1900s, the expression of you're
besides you
besides
and
me, yeah, and you, the expression "you're a daisy" is a true thing that Doc Holliday that was written about Doc Holliday that he'd say all the time, and the phrase "daisy" meant like the perfect way to do something. So you're a daisy. So I was like, well, I need to come up with the perfect way to illustrate character voice because I want it to be a daisy. And I was like, oh, it is a daisy. And that's how it came about. Because really what we were looking for when we illustrate character voice is to break apart the different components of it, which is background, personality, the actual like voice sound, and then the modulation. And a daisy works really nice for that because we got roots, stem, flower with petals. So it worked out nice. But it's one of those weird things I actually had a whiteboard up and I was like just writing illustrations on the whiteboard until I found one. And I probably had like 50 up there. And most of them were really bad. It didn't make any sense. I was like, it's like an orange. It's got the peel and the pulp and then the white strings all around it, which I think is still the pulp. I don't know. And there were a lot of them that were like, the only thing this illustration shows is that I don't know how oranges work. Like that's so.
All right, so I'm going to stop you for a second, and I'm going to, for those of you who haven't seen the dialogue Daisy, the roots of the Daisy are the character's background. Their physical characteristics, their background, where they were born, their family, the things that they don't really have control of. Those characteristics, their environment, where they live, though some people have control over where they live, those things all grow up into the stem of the daisy, which is the character's personality. It's how they relate to the world, how the world sees them. It's traditionally how you would think about somebody's characteristics. They're bold, they're brave, they're scared, they're timid, they're anxious, they're nervous, whatever. That grows up into the flower of the daisy, which is actually what the readers see. The center of the daisy is either the core of the voice or the bass line, and then each of the petals is the modulation. Every character has different modulations of their voice depending on the different scenes they're in, what they're feeling, who they're relating to. And then your book is made up of a garden of daisies because each character has their own daisy. So very
Yeah,
cool.
nice description. You
Well,
rocked it.
when you interview me, I always get rambly, and then you take what I say and you put it into a nice little package. So that's what I'm doing. I
Thanks.
learned from the best podcaster
Yeah, which is
to
funny
be
because
able
I
to.
learned that MI skill from you. So we're like passing skills around here.
Awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
so now we know where the dialogue daisy came from. Talk to us a little bit about, if you will, how you came up with the idea to become the dialogue doctor.
Oh yeah, that's a well-known story. I was at a pretty dark place with my fiction, and that like I couldn't, because of my deep um struggle with self-doubt and anxiety, can't finish a series, and was about to start another standalone book, which felt very hopeless. And I hate marketing, so I don't sell a lot, which is just a like flat out thing. I don't like promoting myself, so I don't sell a lot of books. So I was at a point where I was like, you know what? I've been doing this now for 7 years, writing fiction, and my life tends to spin in 5-year cycles. So I was like, maybe this is the end of this cycle and I should just stop. And so I was supposed to go to my first ever conference. I also tend, until I started doing Dialogue Doctor, I tend to avoid other people. So I was, which is not totally true, but partially true. So I was I was pushing myself to go to my first conference. And the first conference was the Career Author Summit. It was supposed to be in Nashville, and then it got canceled because of COVID. And when it got canceled because of COVID, Jay Thorne was like, "Hey, I feel bad that we're moving this conference to Zoom, so I will give anybody who wants a free like consultation." I was like, "I'll take a free consultation." So I signed up for the free consultation, and one of the things Jay said was like, "You need to take the pressure off of your fiction." And you need to find a way to participate in the author community that doesn't force you to produce, because evidently production is difficult for me. So I mean, I write fast and I write hard, but the publishing is very anxiety producing. So he was like, take the pressure off and find some way to participate in the community and to give yourself the financial resources you need in order to actually market your books. Because one of the reasons I don't market is that I had no money at the time. So he was like, what can you offer the community? I was like, well, I spend all day thinking about dialogue in my professional life. And he was like, okay, well, let's see if you can coach dialogue. So he actually like went out on a limb and let me just coach him through a book. And I had a fantastic time and he seemed to like it. So then I went and did, I don't remember if it was 10 or 15. I did a whole string of like free sessions where I just started reaching out to people. I was like, hey, you want a free dialogue session? I've got a kid behind me in the video. If you saw, he's like wandering around back there. If you want a free dialogue session? And a lot of people showed up to it and they were like, yeah, I love this. This is great. And that was like, okay, I have something to offer. It can help people, which makes me feel good. Um, I'm a natural fixer. I like to find problems and fix them. So it kind of tweaked that side of my brain. Becca Sign would, in her Strengths for Authors, would say that I'm a restorative thinker. That's not what she would say. That's what the test said. And then she helped me understand it. So I like to find broken things and restore them. So yeah, so it like coaching authors in their dialogue kind of tweaks all the buttons for me. So that's how Dialogue Doctor started.
You say that that's a pretty well-known story, but there's a lot of that story that I didn't know before.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really funny.
I knew the
I
part
just
about Jay Thorne, but there was a lot in there that I didn't know about the
oh, I
dark
just
place
feel
of
like
the
everybody
opportunity.
knows.
Yeah, well, and that's why we're interviewing you today, is because I think that there are a lot of things that you think everybody knows, but maybe
Yeah,
they.
it's weird. You know, I've been told this already. Now that I'm actually talking on other people's podcasts and doing things, I share things and people are like, I can't believe you said that. Like that was very vulnerable and open. So just know about me that like I don't actually have a personal filter. Like everything, I say everything all the time because, and part of that is just I have a deep assumption that A, I'm wrong, and B, that everybody can see and know that I believe that I'm wrong. So, and that everyone agrees with me that I'm wrong. So I just go ahead and like say whatever I feel about myself and others. And there's really no like embarrassment factor. It's a little like the Hulk. Like, how do you deal with the anxiety you have all the time? I've just come to a place in my adult life where I realize I'm always anxious, right? Like, so just recognizing that like I'm always anxious, and like I have this friend that walks around with me who is my anxiety. And my friend and I have a very complicated relationship because I think he sucks, but he won't go away. So just recognizing that he's always there and that certain activities make me more anxious than others. So just finding like coping mechanisms to pretend like my friend isn't there with me all the time is helpful. So all that to say, I don't really have a like embarrassment filter. There is no mask. This is me all the time. So
Well, it sounds like you've taken that anxiety, that unwanted friend who goes along with you everywhere, and found a really healthy outlet to be able to kind of not allow him to hold you back.
yeah, I put that a-hole to work. He makes me super productive. You take all that energy, all that anxious energy, and channel it productively into something that terrifies me, right? Like there's no better way like when I wrote my first book, there was no better way to finish a chapter than to recognize my fear around it, see that anxiety, and then demand that that anxiety, all of the energy that was being generated from that anxiety, go to work at putting words on the page. And that's where like also manipulating my own self-doubt comes in handy, because it's like, well, what if the words suck? Well, for somebody who has a ton of self-doubt, it's like, yeah, they're going to suck. There's nothing you can do about it. They're going to be the worst words ever. So just get them on the page, get them on there. And right, like, so using my weaknesses and manipulating them to cause the things that I want has been a weird trick that I've learned in my adulthood. Yeah. Anyway,
Well, that
it's
is
way
that.
more psychobabble than anybody wants in the dialogue. People are like, when is he going to talk about dialogue? He's not. He rarely
No,
does. Anyway,
no, today isn't about talking about dialogue. Today is about, well, there are some questions about dialogue, but today it's about getting to know you. All right. So, knowing that you have all of this anxiety and this self-identification that everything that you do is going to be less than successful, even though your boss tells you all the time at work that you're doing an amazing job.
yes, she
Um,
does.
how did you how did you go from like, hey, I have this idea? You talked to us about getting, 10 or 15 people who gave you some really great feedback. How do you take that and go to a book about dialogue writing and a community of people who are interested in learning from you about dialogue?
Yeah. So I think the question, if I could reframe the question in a like philosophical way to like help me build an answer to it, I think the question is like, how do you go from idea that you're scared of to creation of something? Um, and for me, it is that like voice of anxiety. Like I can't not think about it. So I've just learned that like the way to relieve the tension is to leap, right? Like the way to get through the tension is to leap. And if you can successfully remove expectations of ego, of like, if I'm going to write this thing, if I'm going to start this podcast, if I'm going to do this thing, then it has to be great, right? If you can remove that expectation and be like, nope, I'm going to do this thing and it is going to be what it is. And that is the only thing it's going to be. And understanding part of that also helps me in, um, again, because I mentioned it, it's going to keep coming back. You know, Becca Syme's Strength Finder. My number two is individualization, seeing every case as an individual thing, because I take all feedback less as truth and more as the opinion of an individual, which I find incredibly valuable. That's actually not to diminish that feedback, but I recognize that like people's opinions of things have context, which actually really helps me relate to people individually. It makes me very empathetic because I really want to know the context, to understand what's happening and why you're feeling that. So it doesn't diminish feedback. It actually elevates feedback for me because I'm like, why do you feel the way you feel about that? But it takes the fear away of getting feedback because it just assumes everyone's going to have an opinion. That
Mhm.
opinion is going to have a massive amount of context that feeds that opinion. That context really actually has nothing to do with me. So left in a place, knowing that everyone's going to have an opinion, that it has, and that opinion has, you know, less like the same amount to do with me as it does to where that person is in their life, it removes the pressure of that context for me and says, so the only thing left to do is to manage the obsession in my head that is questioning whether or not I can do this thing. And the only thing to do is prove that I can or not. And it's, you know, my dad was this like high risk surgeon, where he would like only took cases where like people were like ready to die. And that's again not entirely true, but for this illustration, just pretend like it is. So he he's he used to say when I'd get stressed out as a teenager about something, he'd say, "Hey, nobody's going to die on the table. It's okay. Right? It's okay to fail. It's okay like not for that podcast episode to be the best episode of all time. It's okay if you're going to like you and I did the last one recorded, if you're gonna riff on like weird words that nobody knows, like it's okay because that's just you creating. And the act of creation is beautiful in and of itself and is an accomplishment in and of itself. It's okay if the book you write isn't, you know, The Golden Finch or A Man Called Ove or The Book Thief. It's okay if it's just what you wrote, right? Like now, it may not win you a Pulitzer
Oh,
surprise. It's a Pulitzer. It may not win you that thing, but it is going to that's not actually something you can control. So giving up that control helps me move from idea to production. It's the same reason people will be like, how did you write, which is funny to me because this is slow compared to some authors, but it's like, how did you write 2 books a year for 7 years or for 6 years? I guess I did it. And it's like, well, I slowed down in 2020 because I was doing this. And it's like, well, once you get over the fear of is this going to be right or is this going to be wrong, and you recognize that there is no right or wrong, I'm
sounds
gonna
like there's a
say it.
lot of freedom in that.
I'm gonna say it. There is no spoon. Sorry, Laura teased me a while ago that I use that illustration all the
all the
time.
time.
Once
All
you
the
understand there is no spoon, the only thing left for you to do is to create. So, or not create, or choose not to create. And I would always rather take the leap and risk it than than sit around wondering what would have happened if I had. I would always rather take the risk. So that's how those are the mental gymnastics I use to move from idea to creation. You got to kind of find your own because
yeah.
like my mental gymnastics may not work for you. So you got to figure out like your own pattern. But yeah.
Sounds like there's a lot of freedom in having that ability to just create.
There's a lot of freedom. I'd really like to, like, what I'm emotionally working on right now is removing the intense self-doubt because it's actually not helpful. I talk about it like it's helpful, but that's a coping mechanism. It's actually not helpful. It's really painful. And I have to get rid of it because it's holding me back in a lot of ways, right? Like, there's a lot of things I avoid out of that self-doubt, and I have to have this negotiation that I'm describing with myself. Man, it would be great just to not have the negotiation, just to be able to be like, let's go do it. Let's do this thing. Like,
Mhm.
and I have that in me to do that. So I'm currently learning and trying to develop in me the ability to like remove the self-doubt. I'm doing a lot self-talk right now, and I'm like,
Mhm.
using my CBT skills to catch my thoughts and like question, like look at the thought, examine the thought, and then like add to the thought, or put something else around the thought so that I can reframe the thought. So I'm doing a lot of that personal work right now, and I think I'm getting better at it. I'm actually going to finish a series, which is going to be great. So the reason I never finish a series is because I get to the book before the last one, and I'm like, this is crap and nobody wants to read it. And so I just don't. I'm like, I'll just move on to, let me try something new because maybe that won't be crap and somebody will want to read it. And that's actually really insulting to people who like my work. Like, it's a terrible thing to say, and it's very insulting to readers to be like, this is crap and nobody wants to read it, because there's actually a lot of people who like that series and are like, I really want you to finish the damn series. So I get emails. People are like, finish the damn book. And I'm like, well, or like, Sasha Black, the Rebel author podcaster, and you know, general genius, uh, famously told me back in December, like, write the damn tome on on dialogue. And I had months of like, no, because it's gonna
Mhm.
suck. And like struggling with that is hard. So moving past, like, I'm trying to get to a place personally where I get around that self-doubt so I don't have to function with it anymore, so that like we can just like move on to the creation part and stop being concerned, stop being plagued by this weird thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that creation point now.
I love how you're like trying to take my insane rambling and pivot with it. It's gonna be my favorite thing today. I'm gonna start talking about really random stuff just to see if you can pivot.
See if I
It's
can pivot.
Yeah,
Well, you
which I
talked
know
about
you can.
creation. Let's
So
talk about creation. So you have created this amazing Dialogue Doctor community.
you're not
All
biased at all, by the way. All right.
self-doubt aside, you've created this amazing community. You have a Slack channel that people are writing in every week, talking about dialogue. You just did a really successful conference that the feedback is coming in on, and people seem to really like it.
You're way better at promotion than I am. Also, you need to start saying we here, because it's not just me. You do it with me. Anyway.
Well,
So
maybe, but okay, so that's one of my next questions. But before I get to that question, talk about some of the things that you're the most proud of that Dialogue Doctor has done.
I got to work with, I don't think she'd mind me using her name. I got to work with Sherry Decker Hurst to edit a series of books, and I'm super proud of the work we did together in those books. They were fun, they were good. I feel like I added value there, and she's a great writer, and it came out. I actually think that would be, as I think about it, that's what I'm most proud of. I'm proud of authors that we've worked with who like, I read their work and I'm like, damn, that's good. Right? Like that moment's great. I was working with a book client this last week, and we were working on this super emotional scene, and he like had written, we were looking at the scene and it was moving too fast, which is always the problem we have with emotional scenes, is that like we need to slow them down. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm talking to him and we just start riffing on like how the characters are going, and I'm like, man, he's getting it, and he's getting it quickly, and it's going to improve his writing, and I'm really proud that I was able to help him get to that place. So I think that's what I'm most proud of, is the people that we help. It's fun to see people like come into their own voice as writers. That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I have had the opportunity to work with some authors as well, and just seeing how they are able to take just such natural raw talent in
Yeah.
creation. Because I say this all the time as an editor, is that I can't create. I can take something that somebody else created and I can polish it, and help them make it shine, but I can't create out of nothing. So that is a skill set that has amazed me, about you and the other authors within the community, to just see the amazing stuff that just comes out of nothing.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of times like when a writer when I'm working with a writer and they start to find their own voice and they really start to like jive with a character voice and the dialogue starts to really soar, it really feels like you're watching a bird fly for the first time. And it's like the coolest thing. It's like,
Yeah.
man, this is amazing to
Yeah.
watch this bird like take flight. So yeah, that's what I'm most proud of.
And I'm always excited that writers want us to take that journey with them,
Yeah,
because I
it's
feel
the
like the
best.
writing journey is so personal and so vulnerable to
Yeah,
have somebody like trust us enough to come in and work with them
it's
on
like
that.
jumping on their stuff. And I
Yeah.
totally feel out of place all the time there because I'm like, man, this is thank you for letting me be along for this ride.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and as you've said, thank you. That is how I always feel when you let me edit your books.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, how you went about that like you had beta readers, and how did you go from me being a beta reader on
You were the
Mencken
best beta reader.
to being out of it?
No, so there's different types of beta readers, right? Like there's beta readers that like read your book and they're like, I didn't like it. And it's like, okay, well, that's not helpful. And then they're like, can you please tell me why? And then there's beta readers that are like, so I actually started sending surveys out to beta readers. I'd be like, here's the 10 questions I
You
have for
love
you
a
after you read this
survey.
book. I do. Oh my gosh, I love a survey. Um, so anyway, that was I mean, surveys are so great. Sorry. That was but your notes when I gave you my first book were like detailed and like into voice, and you were like commenting on the dialogue and you were like asking questions in the side comment, and I was like, the more of this I can get, the better. Like this is what I wanted. I wanted somebody to like get into the text with me and help me figure it out, because I don't like working alone. I like working with a team. I'm a team player. I like having teams around me. So yeah, you showed up. It's like
So
I'm in.
so I showed up. So that put
Well,
me
okay,
on.
let me rephrase that.
So
You
for,
showed up in an exceptional way. And I was like, the more I can partner with this, the better my work is going to be and the more fun I'm going to have.
so for the listeners who don't know the story behind this, um, when Jeff and I worked together in the nonprofit sector, Jeff was basically my mentor, and I learned so much from him.
So sorry.
And at the time, he was writing nonfiction, and the first nonfiction piece I got of his, I sent it back with a whole bunch of green lines in it, correcting some grammar and some spelling, and with some notes and thoughts in the comments about like, did you mean this here or did you mean this here? And
If I
from
remember,
that
I was like,
point,
I don't know.
from that point forward, I guess you were producing about a nonfiction piece a week
I
at
was
that.
writing, and let's be clear, I was writing a blog. Sorry. Not to diminish blogs, but it's not like I was writing like I'm not Michael
That
Lewis cranking out like nonfiction narrative that like changes the world.
yeah, no, I'm talking about the workbooks you were creating at the time. So
Okay.
it was more than just a blog. There were
There
things
was thought to it. Yeah.
getting like distributed to quite a few people.
It
And
was. Yeah. It was getting passed around.
after the first set of notes, I started getting a weekly.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to edit that?
Hey, you
So-
give me notes.
So when I got the Mencken book, I read the first half of it and I asked Jeff, I said, what kind of notes do you want from me? Do you want, like my thoughts on the plot, the characters? What do you want? And he said, well, whatever. So
I was like, yes, all of those things.
let's go to lunch.
All of those.
We had lunch at Panera and we spent about an hour talking about Mencken and his voice, and Rosie and her voice and their relationship and the other characters.
Yeah. And a lot of what we talk about with the dialogue doctor came from that first meeting. Because something I don't think you and I have talked about was that was the moment where I recognized, oh, readers are on a journey with these characters. Like that was your conversation about like, I didn't like Mencken as a person, was like, oh, this isn't about plot. This isn't about, like, it was a big light bulb for me. It was like, it's not about plot. It's not about, you know, the like intricacies of the twists I have, or like the beautiful descriptions I have of the monsters in the book. All of that's great, but the connection is with the people and like the journey, the emotional journey the people are on. So yeah, so that conversation was really beneficial to me as a writer. So it's like, oh, that's what's happening when somebody reads this book, is there's this like emotional tie to the characters. Yeah.
Well, and this is what I think is so great about you as a teacher and a mentor, is you're able to take that moment of feedback. And you were talking earlier about how each person's feedback is very individualized and that gives it a lot of weight. But you're able to take that individualized feedback and globalize it to be able to see, like in that moment, I, as a reader, didn't connect with that one character. You were able to zoom out and say, oh, every reader should connect with every character, and you're able to teach that to a whole community full of people in the Dialogue Doctor. It's a pretty
Yeah.
amazing skill.
And I would say that it took me like 4 to 5 books after that to actually really start to understand it. I don't really think I've actually accomplished it. Like, I think my next book coming out is the one that I've accomplished it most with. But the
Potentially
set
the
this
self-doubt talking there,
it's true.
because the rest of us love it.
So the second book but it is interesting, like, so taking that feedback, the second book I wrote, I actually wrote scenes where I started focusing on like, how can I help the reader connect to this person? So there's a scene, one of the first scenes of the second book I wrote, it actually occurs in the middle of the book, where I was like, I need the reader to feel the vulnerability of this character. So I was like, at some point, I didn't even know when. I was like, at some point, I'm going to put this kid who you're following through the book. You're following this like middle school aged kid through the book, who's a superhero who's like fighting monsters. I was like, I'm going to have the crap beat out of him, and I'm going to put him in a car because he's homeless, and he's going to like sit in the. Sorry, it hits me emotionally, but he's going to sit in the front seat of the car and he's going to hold a teddy bear, and I'm going to have his partner watch him. And it was like, this is the moment where I'm going to make a reader like feel the pain of this kid. And so like, that's when I started like plotting emotionally books, where it's like, okay, what can I make the reader feel? And how can I make the reader feel those moments? As a writer, those are the moments I'm most proud of, where I'm like, yeah, at this second, I got the reader to feel something. And that's yeah. So anyway, those are the moments. That's
And
where that conversation led into like thinking about writing, and now thinking about editing. When I look at people's books, I'm like, okay, one of the first questions I ask people I work with is like, how do you want the reader to feel about this thing? And a lot of times as writers, we're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, let's think about it. Let's think about like, how do we want them coming into the chapter? How do we want them feeling at the beginning of the chapter? And then how do we want them feeling at the end of the chapter? And what can we do to this character? And what can this character say? How can their voice change? Like, how can their voice modulate to get the reader to feel something? Because I really believe, like, when I read books, it's the books that make me feel something. They're the ones that I'm a great, and maybe like if it's a horror novel, they scare me. If it's a thriller, they take me on that race. If it's a romance, they make me connect to the characters and make me want to like live vicariously through those characters. So like, what is it you want your reader to feel? And then how can we construct that dialogue and that scene to make the reader like feel that thing? Anyway, now I'm getting excited about it.
yeah, the best books are the ones we don't necessarily have to remember every plot twist and turn, but
Yeah.
it's the one that we remember the emotion that we feel
Yeah.
as we're reading it.
Yeah, because that's totally what connects readers to our work, is that like, man, that book made me feel this thing. Anyway,
All right. Well, we're running short on time here. So, couple last questions.
okay.
What advice do you wish somebody had given you about dialogue when you first started writing?
Boy, that's a good question. What advice? Not because I know everything, because I'm like, oh, so much. And because I got a lot of it from you. So a lot of it came like I got a lot of the advice I needed from you. I wish somebody had told me it make dialogue central.
Mm,
I wish somebody had told me that because I spent a lot of time wasting pages and agonizing over like writing the setting and
mhm,
agonizing over like the physical moments in a fight and agonizing over like backstory and like I wish somebody who would have said like if they can't say it out loud it's not important to the reader. I wish somebody had told me that because that is again always a never or never true. that's
mhm.
not um that's not
Universal.
that's not universal, but that is a good guiding principle because we want everything else to be the exception to that rule,
Hmm.
not just on equal footing. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've talked a lot about notes and feedback and how apparently my edits shaped the way you write.
Yeah.
How does it feel to get edits from somebody like me, or the way that you give edits now? How does it feel as a writer?
So, and I'm weird with feedback. I love feedback. I love it. And part of that is like I don't hold anything um I don't hold anything tightly and nothing is personal. Right? I have enough inner criticism that there's very little you can say that my inner critic doesn't go, yeah, yeah, that's true. There's very little you can say to me that I'm not like, yeah, I agree. Let's you and I criticize that together because I am 100% with you in that boat. So that really, again, like using that dysfunction as a strength, that's really helpful for me because it opens up feedback to me. Because it's like
Mm,
this, and again, like understanding that people's perspectives have context and that people's perspectives are their perspectives, and that
mhm,
so like understanding that it's not personal, right? Like it's not about me, it's about the work. Then I can adopt people as team members to say like, hey, if you're going to give me notes and feedback, even bad reviews, right? If you're going to give me a bad review on Amazon, that's not personal. It's
mm,
not about me. It was about your experience with the book. And that, so it's a data point that I
mm,
can learn from and be like,
more
okay,
data.
how can I like pull that that information in to make the next book better, right?
Mhm,
Like part of what also helps about feedback is the assumption that there will be a next book. There's no one book. So
mhm,
if this one has problems, let's fix them for the next one, right? Like because those problems, it's all just a learning experience. There isn't an inline here. So like if it has problems, let's learn it for the next one. I remember I wrote Mankin and the Monsters. And I was so excited when this guy randomly reviewed it because he was one of Amazon's top 100 reviewers, which means he reviews a lot of crap.
mhm,
So I saw his review come up, and this is like I had like 7 reviews on this book. So like that he reviewed it, I was like, oh my gosh. So I saw his review come up, and I was like, oh, I gotta go read that. And he said in the review, he's like, I like the book, but why doesn't anybody in this book pick up a gun and use a freaking gun? And I had so many reasons in my head that
mhm,
people wouldn't use guns, in addition to the fact that I hate guns. But I
mhm,
had so many reasons that people wouldn't use guns in this world. I'd crafted the world around not using guns. And I could have gotten angry about it and I could have been like, well, he
mhm,
doesn't understand, blah, 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 blah. But I didn't. I took it as a note. I was like, okay, I clearly didn't explain that
mhm,
well enough to the reader. All these reasons in my head actually have nothing to do with the reader's experience. The reader's experience is what the reader's experience is. So how do I make it better for the next one? Sure enough, I put a scene in book 2, which is now book 1 because we flipped the order of them. But I put a scene in that book where I was like, let's have the 2 characters talk about why they never pick up guns. Right? Like, and it's a
mhm,
great scene. Well, I like it. It moves the plot along. Um, it's a nice moment where you like it, because what happens is they tie a monster up and the mentor character like fires bullets at the monster and makes the younger character like try to figure out why the bullets don't hit the monster, right? Like it's a great, and it leads into like their discussion about like how they deal with this world and how they're coping in this world. And it's also a trust building moment because the mentor is like being kind of an ass, and so it's his first teaching moment, so it like moves them along emotionally, right? Like there's a lot that I was intending around that scene. Whether or not I actually accomplished it is a different conversation, but I had a lot of intention around that scene. So um taking that note, refusing to get upset about it, refusing to take it personally, not like what I've seen other authors do, which is like, well, I'm going to reach out to him and I'm going to explain to him what it was. Like, why are you doing that? It's not about you. It's
Right.
about his experience with the book. So taking that experience and learning from it and being like, oh yeah, this is what I need to do next. And not every note is a great note, right? Like I've gotten notes that are like one person left me a note recently, was like, couldn't finish it. I'm like, all right, well, that's not helpful, right?
Now, I thought where you were going to go with not helpful is when in the margin I write, cut this whole scene, even though I know you won't because you wrote it for you.
No, that's a super helpful note because, and you know what I do with those? You don't know this. I don't think I want to tell you. What I do with those moments is I actually tally them. And I'm like, how many of these do I have? Because I don't want more than one every like 7 or 8 pages. Right? Because if I'm writing the book for me, there's no reason to publish it. But
Right.
if this is for me, great, I wrote it. I'm just going to keep it on my shelf. It's fantastic. There's definitely no reason to market it. So if I have a bunch of scenes that my trusted editor is saying, you wrote this because it makes you laugh, then like, not like, I need to be careful that I can keep a couple of them because there's probably someone out there that has the same sense of humor I do and they will also laugh at it, but I can't keep all of them. So
Yeah.
like tracking those moments of like, this doesn't advance the plot, this doesn't help me get to know the characters, this doesn't create an emotional experience to me, it is a complete your conversation of whether or not which one of them is Batman and which one of them is Robin does
What
not
it's like
advance
to be a
anything.
spy 20 years
What
ago,
it's like to be a spy
not
20
like
years
James
ago.
Bond.
Yeah. It's not like James Bond. Just because you want to put the line in there, James Bond is a wussy. Just because you want to say that doesn't mean you should keep it. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's what I do with this.
that's so funny. That's so funny. All right. Last question.
Okay.
Where's the Dialogue Doctor going next?
We are going to be producing books this summer. We're putting them out. You and I are actually working on our first one now in a Google Doc. And it's fun. It's going to be a good book. We're writing a book on characterization. We're also working on a book that is a bunch of prompts, editing and writing prompts to help you improve your dialogue. We're putting that one together slowly. So we got books coming out this fall. Where I'm speaking at a ton of conferences because I'm finding that I really enjoy connecting with large crowds of people. So I'm speaking at the Vancouver Island Romance Writers Association with Sasha Black this fall. I'm speaking at the Career Author Summit that Jay Thorne and Zach Bohannon are putting on, which is going to be a lot of fun. It's in person in Nashville. I think there's a digital component to it as well if you want to come digital. I'm speaking at David Wallace has a conference coming this summer in July that I'm a speaker at, geared toward like how do you finish your book. So lots of speaking engagements coming up too. And then I'm very excited about the novel I'm writing because I feel like it's taking what I'm learning from being the dialogue doctor and applying it to fiction. So that's also going to come out probably not until November at this point because it needs several edits. So yeah,
Maybe your
um,
editor should get on it.
that's maybe the writer should finish the freaking first draft. Yeah, so that's what's coming for Dialogue Doctor this year. Next year is a whole new ballgame. We have our 1-year anniversary coming up. I'm trying to plan something to do fun for our 1-year anniversary, but I haven't figured it out yet.
That's
Yeah.
exciting. Well, I am super humbled that you have invited me to go on this journey with you.
Whatever. Thanks for coming with me.
And I am appreciative for you coming on our podcast.
Yay!
Being a guest on our podcast. How's it to be a guest instead of the person who asks all the questions?
It sucks.
You did such a great job.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm turning off the recording.